Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Robert Adams, and joining us this evening from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flight Lieutenant Emily Wilson. We warmly welcome the family of Private Robert James Tissear, whose story will be told shortly. This evening we're honoured to acknowledge Mr. Andreas Schwartz, Chief Correspondent for the Defence Budget, German Federal Parliament, and the accompanying delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We warmly welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors to the memorial, and students on behalf of Glendale East Public School from Glendale, New South Wales. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Students, you may now be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Tissear, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they have done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed to the entrance of the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Robert James Tissear. Robert Tissear was born in 1897 to Charles and Catherine Tissear of Healesville, Victoria. His family were among the earliest to settle in the district as part of the village settlement scheme instigated by the Patterson government. Robert grew up on the family holding on the corner of Albert and Dollery Roads and attended Badger Street State School and later Healesville State School. He went on to work as a grocer for Mr. Bradshaw and reportedly earned the respect of his employer and all with whom he came in contact. In the years before the outbreak of war, the Tissear family suffered a number of losses. Robert's sister Catherine died at the age of 21 in 1909, and in 1913, his brother John was killed while a patient at the Yarra Bend Asylum. In January 1915, Robert's father Charles died unexpectedly, and just over 6 months later, Robert enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force, with his attestation papers noting that his mother was dependent on his earnings. Robert Tissear underwent a period of training at Broadmeadows Camp before going home to visit his family. As a large number of enlisted men from the Healesville district were at home at the same time, the town held a social evening in their honour. It was reported that the soldiers, who numbered fully 20, must have been highly delighted to see such a large number present to cheer them on their way, and every part and section of the district and community attended. Before the end of the evening, a number of soldiers, including Private Tissear, were presented with a gold medal on behalf of the community. Private Tissear left Australia for active service overseas shortly afterwards, arriving in Egypt in early 1916 with reinforcements to the 24th Battalion. He continued training in the desert for some months, transferring to the 8th Battalion in February, before being sent on to France to fight on the Western Front. Not long after arriving in Marseille, Private Tissear fell ill and spent some weeks in hospital suffering from bronchitis. Although it was suspected he might have some form of tuberculosis, Tissear was well enough to rejoin his battalion in the field in mid-July 1916. Less than a fortnight later, the 1st Australian Division, of which the 8th Battalion was a part, attacked and captured Tissear. The 8th Battalion did not take part in the initial attack on the heavily fortified French village, but was called in to push the attack on from the right flank as the first part proved successful. Later, they moved into the village itself, clearing dugouts and cellars of the enemy as the advance moved onto the OG lines to the northwest. On the 26th of July, 1916, during these operations, Private Robert Tissear was killed in action. No record remains of the manner of his death, but he was buried to the northeast of Tissear by his comrades. After the war, when war grave detachments were looking for lonely battlefield graves to move into cemeteries, they could not find Private Tissear's resting place in the destroyed landscape. Today, he is commemorated on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux. Robert Tissear was 19 years old. He was fondly remembered by family and friends in Australia. His brother Charles published a verse in the newspaper in his memory, which read in part, "His warfare o'er, his battle fought, his victory won, though dearly bought. For country's sake his life he gave, sleep on, dear brother, in a soldier's grave." Robert's mother also published verse in a memorial notice on behalf of the family. It was a commonly used poem that reads, "His loving ways and cheery smiles are pleasant to recall. He had a kindly word for each and died beloved by all." The most poignant memorial notice comes from Robert's old comrade, William Hussey, who used part of the same poem in July 1917, writing, "He sleeps not in his native land, but under foreign skies. Far from those who loved him, in a hero's grave he lies." A month after publishing his memorial to his old friend in the Healesville Guardian, William Hussey enlisted in the AIF. He was killed in action in September 1918, 6 weeks before the end of the war. Private Robert Tissear's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Robert James Tissear, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
For those who are able, I now invite you to please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Tissear or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.